next level.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Coach Tiffany Parra, Editor-in-Chief of Phoenix Fitness Fanatics magazine, and also contributing writer for Own It magazine and publishing. We are taking center stage today on the Own It publishing platform. This is our Wellness Wednesday, and I'm going to go ahead and bring my contributing writer and very good friend, Felicia Pelto, up in the house.
Hey,
what's going on, girl? Happy Wellness Wednesday.
Yes, happy Wellness Wednesday.
Oh, I absolutely am. I'm going to love this conversation today, and I really hope that our audience does as well, especially you ladies out there. You guys are going to really, really appreciate this conversation. But first and foremost, please, Felicia, please introduce yourself. Tell everyone who you are, where you're from, just a little bit about your background and what you do, and we'll go ahead and get this party started.
Yeah. Goodness, I feel like I have such a long sheet on some level. It's always like challenging for me to abbreviate, right? Because it's like I really want people to still understand like the depth of how much I've spent, whether that's like in my career overall, just so anyway, right? Let me get into it then. My name is Felicia Pelto. I'm excited to add on that I'm a national board certified health and wellness coach. I passed that test this past November. But I've been a health coach, certified, back in, it would be like 2013, something like that. Yeah, 2013, 14. From the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I know it's been at least a decade. I can say that much, right? So we'll say like at latest 2016. But even before that, I had started helping friends lose weight in middle school. So as early as the age of 14, I started doing things like this, experimenting, watching my mom deal with her weight on and off. So, I got certifications because at some point I was like, gosh, I know I've helped people, but maybe I could do better. So I wanted to do that to see, was there things that I didn't know? And yes, there always is something that I didn't know that I learned about, or that I saw a correlation as a result of how someone said it to me or how I read over something. And since then have studied hormone health. So I'm a certified hormone health coach as well. And hey, right, I'm a new mom, a little one of 3, dealt with breastfeeding, the challenges of breastfeeding. I will say though that I was blessed in very particular ways. And some of that I even know is even due to my condition I'll share. And, so there's pros and cons to everything, right? Bio individuality, biochemistry, uniqueness, all plays a part in how our bodies are these wonderful, I guess I'll say garden, right? These beautiful gardens, each needing their own nutritional makeup, unique foods and things and minerals, unique balances required for us to come back to health. And so my latest fun journey is digging into the science of functional medicine because, again, I feel like I might have found my space to be like, yay, it all speaks to the things that I've been intuitively knowing and feeling and all of this. And now here's these publications to back up things that I just somewhat knew, but didn't have like the words to explain how I could see the correlation in it, I think about it, how people can do math in their head, they don't, their brain does all these gymnastics of seeing numbers and doing things. And by the time they get there, it's like, bam, in a second to us on the outside. But, it's like, but that's how my brain works with all this health stuff. So I'm so excited to be here and I look forward to, talking about it with you.
Yes. I love it. So today on our Wellness Wednesday, we are talking about why dieting isn't working. And You know, is it hormones over willpower? What is that, right? Because as we get older, and we gotta talk about this, ladies. As we get older, we go through these changes, lots of changes. Hormones are all over the place. And I know for me, in my own personal journey of releasing almost 120 pounds and really being able to manage it for over a decade, right? But it has been so much just jumping into books, doing the research, employing the right people to come into my circle to be able to give me that education that I need to know where to find that balance. I know that I was doing a lot of running for a while, and I'd run and I would do like 5 miles in a day, and I was eating really, really healthy, but I still was at that plateau. And I'm like, good Lord, like, what is going on? I'm doing all the things. I'm doing everything. But I wasn't doing everything. I was missing the buck on quite a few things. So I know in today's world, a lot of people are moving away from, these really restricted dieting, because those restrictive diets you can't really stick to anyway. It's like, that's not something for the long haul. You need something that's going to be a lifestyle change. And I know there's a lot of hormone informed wellness going on now out there, Felicia. And let's talk about that. Why do you feel that, like the traditional diets are failing when our hormones are out of balance? Because I know I was doing the damn thing and I just couldn't seem to get it together until I figured out that winning combination, which was balancing my hormones.
Yeah. So, I love that. I love this question. Right. Because you had me even curious while you were speaking. You said you were on it, and then you're like, but then I realized I wasn't on it. And I'm real curious as to what those, things are. But so in general, I think about how, like, things, and my brain is now like kicking back all the way to when I even remember like observing my mom. Because, right, you're talking about like getting in that exercise, right? You're doing it, you're pushing, you're getting it through, and you're like, why am I not breaking this plateau? What's happening here? Like, you're pretty much like, I'm sweating my clothes off. Like, come on now, But then it's funny because there's all these other parts, all these other layers to us, right? So it's like you could be doing enough activity that your body, but like perhaps your body's gotten used to it if you've done it for too long, right? Because our metabolism, like, we're adaptive beings. That's what's so beautiful. So sometimes, like, there is benefit to doing something that kind of like supercharges it or just shifts it somehow. You just need essentially what I call a breaking point. That can be very beneficial. That's when people look at high intensity workouts. But again, it's something that is something that I would say you want to do like almost short and sweet. You just need a Kickstarter, something to occasionally like kind of whack your system, when we think back to like old things, like, not saying, but thinking back in the day, like if something didn't work, sometimes you gave it just a good whack. You know what I mean?
Like, yeah.
And then for some reason it jarred it back into place,
That's right.
Sometimes we had to blow on it. I know they always told us not to, those Nintendo cartridges. They're like, don't blow on the moisture from your mouth. All of us. That's exactly. And it would work. It would, right. But that's, and I know I'm being silly. I'm totally a gamer. So it's funny that it's those nostalgic things I don't get to do anymore. Now the system has it. I just click a button and it's loading, it's all these servers it's on. But that's the thing, I guess I think about it because I do sometimes use the analogy of a game. But since we can relate to that, think about that now, like, because it's all in a server, right? Everything is outsourced. We can't quite fix it ourselves. And that's sometimes the problem with, expecting it from something specifically too much,
Mhm.
right? But it's very
Mhm.
much about balance. So it can't just be the workout.
Right.
How is the food? How are you doing in that area? How's environmentally, and that could be emotionally for you. How's things going emotionally, relationships, right? If you've got
Stress.
any stress in a relationship or
Mhm.
work related, how's the career and finances, right? Like it all has kind of like this domino effect. I either see it stacked and one gets knocked, so eventually it all falls over. Or, it's one of those things that you kind of got to, like, instead of outsourcing it, pull it in and look at it. Right.
Right.
Because sometimes we could be outsourcing via fast food. Right. It's very convenient. I remember in my younger days, and it was more specifically, I had such a busy lifestyle that I couldn't eat. Like I couldn't like cook food for myself. When I did it well. But one thing was I loved living in Ann Arbor at the time. I'm a Michigander. And
Yeah.
so instead of shopping, and budgeting financially in that way, like to say, I'm going to shop, I'm going to cook, da, da, da. I was like, all right, I'm removing that, but changing that budget to being out. And whenever I ate out, I always made sure that I either had leftovers from that meal, and it was as healthy as it could be, because I always expected crap while I was at work, right? And plus, since I wasn't having that budget at home, I was able to adjust that. But, not trying to like go on a tangent, but just talking about like it's all the things, the microbiome, is it possible that we could have leaky gut, because you could be taking all the vitamins, but if your body's not assimilating that into your body well, because it
Right.
can't, that very starting function of digestion is being inflamed, attacked, however, it's dealing with it, and crazy enough, stress from the brain, right? They're saying that's the second brain
Right.
and all that. So hormonally, you could be feeling depressed. You could be having mood swings. You could be, again, weight gain is a part of that. Gaining instead of
It
losing,
is.
even though you're doing everything. There's
Right.
there's a lot that needs, right? And so we've
Yeah.
got to almost have like a very gentle step-by-step approach that allows for that integration. Because if you go too fast, I even just did a parasite cleanse myself this past week. And it's more, I specifically think about it as I'm doing like a system flush. Yes, I'll end up losing some weight, but that's secondary because as soon
Right.
as I went back to eating the way that I normally do, I put those pounds back on and I wasn't disappointed. I expected it. Like I said, it was secondary because I was like, I am going to rush back into this. I knew I was going to because of other necessities, um, and the acceptance of that is huge because that was me noticing like it was quick weight. I have a very complex scale that shows me my weight percentage, BMI, muscle mass, bone density, water percentage, protein, visceral versus what's that other fat? Visceral versus
Oh shoot. I can't think of the
oh, subcutaneous. I got it. Subcutaneous fat. So visceral fat, those over the organs versus that's on the outside, just kind of jiggling and hanging with you.
giggling.
I got my muffin tops, but it's also winter. So girl, let me tell you, I don't mind the extra on there. Summer is the best time to lose weight. You feel great all the time. You're never too cold,
That's
at
right.
least for
That's
me,
right.
that's where I'm like, that's where I want my rocking body, as well as most of us do. But yeah, you want to do it quick and fast, I'll tell you something.
Yeah, absolutely. And and it's you mentioned when I had said that earlier, the thing that worked for me was, like you said, it's switching it up, because I was doing miles a day every day. My body got used to it. And also walking is great. Walking is really, really great for maintaining, but
It is.
muscle building is going to be what you succeed with, because of the fact
Absolutely.
that when you build the muscle, your body naturally, the metabolism is going to speed up because you have more muscle mass. So when you have more muscle mass, you're able to burn calories when you're at rest. So when you're sitting down, like we're sitting here having a conversation, if you've got some nice muscle mass, you're still, I mean, I move a lot anyway, but you're still burning those
Absolutely.
calories. You're up, you're still so, and even when you go to sleep, you're
Yep.
also burning those calories. But I also noticed too there was a shift in my hormones when I gained a little more muscle mass as well. So that is one of the keys there.
Yeah.
Also, I did start drinking some of the different herbal tea blends that, I went to an herbalist, and she mixed
Hmm.
a really really good tea for me. There's a lot of herbs out there that can
Yes.
help to balance the hormones. You just have to do your research. And anytime you're going to mix
Hmm.
herbs or anything like that, you always want to consult with your doctor. Make sure
Yeah.
that, because if you have, if you're on a medication, anything like that, you do not want any type of side effect, anything like that. So I always always recommend that first
Oh,
and foremost.
absolutely.
But there are, that's how I was able to kind of succeed on that. So
Because right.
let's talk about insulin and that cortisol, because you talked about stress is
Hmm.
what spikes that cortisol level. So you're seeing more belly fat and things like that, right? It's
Yeah.
settling in places that we don't want it to, especially us ladies, right? We want those nice curvy waists, and we don't want the muffin tops and stuff. I mean, hey, again, in the wintertime, if you can gain a few pounds, that's great. Give yourself grace through this, but also
Absolutely.
that estrogen too. So how do, in your opinion, how do insulin, cortisol, and estrogen impact weight loss? Because it seems like it kind of helps us kind of hold on to a lot of it.
Right. No, it is true. I mean, it's funny because like I used to get real frustrated. It's, because there's those people where their hormones are all right, so that's where, they start at something and they start seeing it come off like easy, no big deal. And, and like it's really easy for them too. It's like, let me just like not have my morning donuts, like I'm starting a bad habit. Let me just stop. And then it just, they back to healthy again. Then there's those of
Right.
us that might have hormone issues. And I don't even want to say issues, like hormone imbalances, right? That's really what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it just means that we're more predisposed or hypersensitive to our environments, and our stress response is more intense than others. Because I even had this realization the other day where, I present and I have conversations like this, like throughout my workday in my professional life as a state employee. And I enjoy what I do. Like I genuinely do. But I noticed one of the nights, and I think it was my first night back, presenting after, having Christmas vacation and all that. But I was like, I felt my heart rate starting to race, and I also felt my armpits sweating profusely. And I was like, what is happening?
Right.
I was like, what is happening right now? And I was like, stress, but it's good stress, but it's still stress,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah,
even good stress is still stress.
it
I'm
is.
like, like it just made me feel like, like I don't know how else to describe it.
Well, and
But it's
sometimes
like,
when you feel like that, that's when you have to take that minute to take that nice, deep, cleansing breath.
yeah,
And, as one of our fellow, contributors for Phoenix Fitness, Teresa Palmer says, tap into that heart, right? Because when you felt the heart racing. So it's
yeah,
like, okay, you take those nice, deep breaths. It's going to bring down the heart rate,
yeah,
feel better, you're more focused, but you
absolutely.
felt it though, and you
Yeah,
knew what it was. So I really definitely recommend tap in, start
yeah,
knowing you, people, start knowing
absolutely.
how you feel. When you feel good, how do you feel? And like you said, stress is stress.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
stress,
Whether it's good or
excited.
bad. Now, I'll tell you in my professional life, though, how I usually manage that because, like, I was doing it virtually like we are now. But normally I'm standing, I'm in front of people, I'm on a stage.
Mm,
So I get to walk it out, right? Like, I get to, all
yes.
right, and sometimes I have other people like get with me, like,
Yeah.
especially if it's like an evening and like maybe they were in traffic. I can tell some people are coming in late or whatever. I'm like, all right, I don't know about y'all, but I'm feeling anxious. How about we all take a deep breath?
Yes.
Ooh. right? Like, oof, I'm like, you probably coming from work. I got out of traffic. If we didn't get a minute and we're all rushing into the same space, I'm like, I know it's not just me.
Right.
Like this, everybody's probably feeling this way, you know? And
Yeah.
so, but in my virtual space, luckily I do have a standing desk, right? So I have my standing desk and I get to kind of rock and pace myself. They don't necessarily know that. What coincidentally happened, and I always feel like I love to acknowledge, when, God, the universe, however you identify with that, all omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent kind of being. But I was like, the beautiful gift I received of it was that my camera wasn't working anyway. So I got to just speak and kind of do whatever I wanted behind that camera. And they were none the
Right.
wiser. So it was funny because I was just like, oh, this works to my benefit. So I was like, I just got to like work it out because, that anxiousness creates, high energy. Right. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, this is when someone should or would go on a walk or run. Maybe you do the little salsa, do some
Right.
dancing, a dance party. And look, that'd just be fun. And you got a whole workout in.
Right.
It
And
was
it's just
funny.
moving. So it's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that when you shake yourself up and you move, you know, that's going to bring that cortisol level down. That's going to bring, because when all of those hormones are high, that's when you're holding on to the weight. That's when you're feeling anxious and you're,
Yep.
excuse me, there's just so much going on. And once you figure out just some ways to kind of just bring those back into balance, which again could be a deep breath, could
Yep.
be shimmying in your seat, could
Yep.
be getting up, doing the salsa, whatever that is to bring that stress down. So that brings all those hormones down and brings up the good hormones, right?
Oh
Brings
yeah,
up
that's
those
where I was.
endorphins and the dopamine and the serotonin and all the good
Yep.
stuff that is going to help us to stay creative, continuing to move. I know when my endorphins are up, I always want to move and just, I'm happy, and it's that's when I know when I'm at my best health is when I
Yeah.
can to keep those hormones up. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And
So
then, the practice of like being able to tap in, like with yourself, like you talked about. And then, energy in motion are emotions, right? So it's like when you tap in and you recognize like how I did, all right, I'm feeling anxious. My body's saying it wants to move. And so that's what we got to do, and it's funny because like you said, it allowed me to stay in that creative space, even though we're virtual. I'm like, hey folks, thank you so much for coming. If you're driving, listening, because I know technically we're virtual. Like you could be doing God knows what,
right,
right? Just like I said, I was aware I could be doing God knows what
right,
behind the camera.
right.
So it's like, but thank you for taking your time to tune in, right?
Yes,
And this is what we're
yes,
going to talk about today. It just kind of had me in a nice, like, DJ kind of mood,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
think people appreciate that, authenticity of like, hey, we're going to have fun.
that's
There's
true.
also a colleague of mine who's always been that kind of person, very just like loose and open. And I admire that. So I
Yeah,
was like, I'm going to adopt some of that, like, into my, because it does make things like fun, it's like, someone with a different energy. We're not all just NPCs operating
that's right.
in this,
Right.
as some may believe, is a simulation. I'm like, let me have the best simulation ever. Then let me rewrite this so it's mine. Right? Let me
Right.
control my algorithm.
So let's say, tell me, what mistakes do you see clients making when they're trying to quote unquote eat healthy, create that healthy lifestyle? There's a lot of trends out there. There's a lot of
Yeah.
different things. So what mistakes do you see quite frequently out there when people are trying to make this healthy eating or eating healthy change?
Yeah. I'd say the first two things that came to mind immediately was following trends.
Mm-hmm.
Because trends, yeah, I mean, there's some use to them. Like, hey, notice this, but that's it. That's really what I feel like that is. One, yes. Sorry, my little one's asking for a snack. Do you need help? No. Here you go, sweet. Oh, go ahead. And thank you, sweet girl. Enjoy yourself. But what was it? Two things. First thing, following the trend. Second thing, not checking your belief before you get started. Because I don't know, like, I just feel like there's an awareness you really need to have there of what you believe you can do. Because if you don't believe you can do it and you go doing it, there's no point, right? Like, you've already set yourself up to fail. Or you could even do it as like a trial, right? Let's see what this looks like and analyze, like, and I don't mean analyze, like, but notice, I guess, yourself. Like, how are you thinking and feeling as you're going through this thing with no expectations? But because you learn a lot about yourself when you're just the one aware of what you're thinking. And I say this because, like, before I truly got results with anything that I tried to do, I ended up recognizing that I had low self-esteem. I don't know how if I'm honest, I don't quite know how I noticed. I think, I was in college, so, you can be exposed to a lot of things, but I ended up picking up the book, The 5 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden.
Okay.
And I read through that book, and it was what made me look back at recognizing that my beliefs were likely others' beliefs, like my mom's, and I bring up my mom a lot because, right, she's my mom. She's the closest woman to me. I think all of us as women, we have different relationships with our mothers, good and bad, across all of them, and she was very self-conscious about her weight. There were sometimes like beliefs that she had. And I remember seeing one really solidify with her was that if you're pretty much like unattractive, then you're less likely to get hurt as a woman. It was, and so weight, when it came to weight gain, it almost was like the fat was a protective barrier, right?
Wow.
I won't be as attractive, so I won't, right? So I'm less likely to be sexual assaulted, or, if I don't want to interact with my spouse, then I have that, right? They're less attracted to me, so I don't have to deal with that, so I saw it in various ways, but it was because of that book that I dug in. And the first thing that I had noticed with my mom was she would look in the mirror and go, oh, like, just be aghast at her own, and I was just like, and as a child, right? And I even got to see this through my daughter, right? So how healing happens throughout life. But, I recognize that I could have been feeling that way about my body. And my little one and I are getting dressed out of the tub. And she goes, Mama, you were so beautiful.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, honey, and I'm like, so sweet. Part of me is also like, she's repeating things she's definitely heard. But, so it's sweet to hear that, we have that relationship too. That's how she's interpreting us. But it also made me think back to then when I was little and I saw my mom, and I had the same thought, but didn't have the words to articulate at her age like she can with me. So I was thinking, oh, I love you so much. Like, seeing my mom
needed that.
Yeah, and her being like, oh my God, ew. And I'm thinking, what? Is there a bug on you?
Right.
Is something
and how you speak to yourself is, I mean, it's essential in this journey, right? And if you're trying to release that weight, I mean, physical, mental, spiritual, any of that weight, I know for myself, I had to learn to speak to myself in the mirror, and it was a little hard at first. I did have those self-esteem issues. I felt, oh, you're ugly, you're this, you're that, you're fat, you're that, all the things. But yet when I had a coach tell me, just go and just say, hey, beautiful, hey, sexy, something. And I was almost embarrassed to even talk to myself in the mirror. It came out almost a whisper,
That's real though, because I had that, because that was essentially the next step in that book was, looking in the mirror and saying positive things to yourself. Because it really said, like, when was the last time you did this? And I was like, gosh, I have no idea. When I thought about it,
Yeah.
in high school, I remember having rules for myself, rules of conduct. But, in terms of dating and stuff too, rules, we never date a friend, man, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But also, when you think about that, that is also a form of stress management that I developed at a young age. I was like, these are rules and boundaries that I abide by, partially because of like how this is how I want our relationships to be, right? Like, this is what I consider a safe relationship, is knowing that, my girlfriend's not hawking my dude and I'm not hawking hers. And after they're done, we're not, get away from me, dude. Like, you were hers. Nah. you know, like, that was just, to me, like, good relationships and things like that. And it also, like, kept the drama out of our relationships, at a young age.
No, keep the drama down.
Right. Nope, we ain't having that drama. And if that's the drama you want, we can't be friends. Like,
well, because that's all it's going to do is add stress. And all of a sudden, you're having hormone imbalances and everything's all going crazy. Right? Mm-hmm. It's all about, like, the stress. And
I mean, it's life management. Like, it really is.
So let's talk about like hormone-friendly eating. What does hormone-friendly eating actually look like for someone? Because I mentioned some herbs earlier, but I know it looks like so much more than that. I mean, I know there's foods, there's this, there's that. So what does hormone-friendly eating actually look like in your opinion?
I mean, okay, this is me going like high level, right? Like, if you can do it high level eating, it's eating organic, fresh, local, cooked foods, most, like, 99% of the time, if not 100% of the time. But that's unrealistic for most people. But it's literally just doing the best you can when you can, and doing more plant-based where possible as well. Because, and I say plant-based only because, there's minerals in those, right? There's minerals in plants that we can't get from meat. That's why we need to have it. And then there's also fiber, because fiber helps pull gunk out. It helps clear the pathways for hydration, assimilation, nutrition, absorption, right? Because if there's stuff stuck up in that colon, that's potential for colon cancer and all that other stuff, scary things. But yeah, because that stuff clears out too extra hormones that can just be chilling, right? Like, that's where insulin resistance is, because there's just insulin circulating. But you get enough vegetables in your system, and it's helping your body to clear and process that stuff and get the extra stuff out of your body. Meat doesn't do that, like, just saying, meat doesn't, veggies do that. Fruit can do that, but not the super sweet ones, because they usually have more sugar than fiber. So you got to get used to, especially anyone dealing with PCOS or, insulin resistance, even estrogen dominance usually has some relationship with that as well, and weight gain even. And that's what's so crazy and also fun, is that many of us can have same symptoms, different reasons. Different reasons, because of our biochemistry is so different, So then I always say, try to connect to someone that looks like you, because your biochemistry is more likely to be similar.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Like, we've gone over just a little bit, y'all, but Felicia, please tell everyone how they can connect with you if they want to, get some knowledge, some more knowledge and wisdom about how to balance their hormones, hormone-friendly eating, just all the things that they need to really just thrive. And these are really, again, for the women out there that are 40 plus, dealing with, some of those hormone imbalances, perimenopause, all the things that are coming our way. We will continue to bring more knowledge and wisdom your way about this as well. So Felicia, how can they connect with you?
Yeah. I'd say the best way to connect with me is to find me, like, either my group, which is Empowered Women Losing Weight in, I want to say, losing weight, balancing hormones, getting healthy, essentially. But you can also find me on Facebook, Felicia Pelto, weight loss and hormone health coach business page. There I also share a link to my group. And then through those, you can message me. I'd love to offer as well health history assessment. That's where essentially we just kind of talk about what you're dealing with and, go from there. And I usually share like 3 insights as to how you could get started on your health journey. And then naturally, if it seems appropriate, we can talk about what it looks like to work with me and start working on healing and dealing with any of those imbalances that you might have.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Felicia, for coming and joining me and taking center stage today on the Own It Magazine and Publishing platform. This is Phoenix Fitness Fanatics. We are the heartbeat in the Own It Magazine as well as the Lifestyle and Leisure Magazine. So definitely check out those magazines. Get your fitness fix out as well. If you're looking to be physically, mentally, spiritually, or even financially fit, you definitely want to tap in. So everyone, happy Wellness Wednesday. We hope you have enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Happy Wellness Wednesday.